We've previously talked about how states are leading the way when it comes to progressive policies like marijuana legalization and now potentially single payer if you look to states like New York and California. However, Hawaii is now emerging as a leader in their own right because they passed a bill supporting universal basic income. And that's not even the best part. They passed the bill in both houses unanimously. So, first of all, they give us Tulsi Gabbard, and now they're leading the way when it comes to universal basic income. Okay, if you live in Hawaii, virtual high five, because you are electing people to your state legislature that actually give a damn about you. So this is a huge, huge win for progressives like myself who actually advocate for universal basic income and see it as something that's inevitable to fight off automation and job loss in the future. So Business Insider explains, on June 15th, Hawaii State Representative Chris Lee wrote a Reddit post about House Concurrent Resolution 89, a bill he says he introduced in order to start a conversation about our future. According to Lee, after much work and with the help of a few key colleagues, it passed both houses of the state legislature unanimously. Lee also mentioned the development via Twitter. Hawaii, first state to declare everyone deserves basic financial security, begins eval of universal basic income. #UBI. The bill has two major provisions. First, it declares that all families in Hawaii are entitled to basic financial security. As far as I'm told, it's the first time any state has made such a pronouncement, wrote Lee. The second provision establishes a number of government offices to analyze our state's economy and find ways to ensure all families have basic financial security, including an evaluation of different forms of full or partial universal basic income. The congressman thanked Redditors in his post, and he said the site became the first resource in considering universal basic income, and added a Reddit standard too long didn't read at the end. The state of Hawaii is going to begin evaluating universal basic income. Under a universal basic income program, every citizen is granted a fixed income that's not dependent on their status in life. Despite the current focus on the concept, it actually isn't particularly new. In fact, former US President Richard Nixon actually floated the idea back in 1969. However, the benefits of such a program have become more appealing in light of recent technological advances, specifically the adoption of automated systems that could result in widespread unemployment. Proponents of UBI have highlighted how it would be an improvement on existing social welfare programs while mitigating the effects of the joblessness expected to follow automation. Critics think that UBI would encourage a more lax attitude about work and argue that funding such a system would be difficult, if not impossible. Hawaii may be the first U.S. state to pass any sort of UBI-positive legislation, but several countries around the globe are already testing the system. Finland began its 2-year UBI pilot in 2016, and Germany has one as well. Canada plans to start trials in Prince Edward Island and Ontario, while India is currently debating the merits of UBI. Several private UBI endeavors are also in the works, including one that uses blockchain and cryptocurrency. So again, let me just say how excited I am that this bill not just passed, but passed unanimously. That's huge. Now, understand that they're not actually codifying universal basic income into law, but it's certainly a step forward in the right direction. So that's great. Now, whenever I talk about states implementing these progressive policies, I always have to mention the importance of the domino effect. So it always takes one state to get the ball rolling, and then years later, you see more and more states start to follow suit. So again, I sound like a broken record, but it's true and it's really important. So Colorado and Washington State voted by referendum to legalize marijuana 2 years later. Alaska, the District of Columbia, Oregon legalized marijuana in 2014, and then a couple of years later we saw Maine and California legalize marijuana. So it just takes a couple of states to get the ball rolling. We saw California and then New York basically advance single-payer healthcare. So if Hawaii does this, and if they at least experiment with universal basic income and it works and it's a success, this is a really great way to fight off poverty in the future. I don't think that this is the end-all be-all, and I don't necessarily know what the correct amount of income should be. So I think a starting point should be $12,000 a year. Each person gets $1,000 each month. In terms of funding, I personally don't actually know how this would be funded because, you know, a lot of people talk about taxing the rich when it comes to single-payer healthcare, and I certainly have this position. So I don't know if after taxing them and paying for healthcare, there would be money left over to pay for universal basic income. But certainly, if we find money to pay for wars, we can find a way to fund this. And it's something that's important if you don't want there to be mass poverty in the future when automation takes over, because it's something that's just inevitable. Technology is inevitable, so we've got to make sure that we're proactive in fighting off poverty in the future. But again, it's difficult to think about the future because if you're an elected official, your term is 2 years, 6 years? So that's something that it has a high cost and a diffused benefit because we won't really see the payoff of universal basic income until the future. But it's something that is smart to do. It's something that we need to be doing, and the fact that countries around the globe are experimenting with it is a good sign. Now, one thing that's important is that I've heard some pushback from people on the left who are progressive that state, it shouldn't be universal basic income. I think we should cap it. If you make more than, let's say, $500,000 a year, you don't need universal basic income. You don't need a $1,000 payment every single month. But that's not really the point. The reason why it's universal basic income is so that way public opinion remains favorable to it. It's not viewed as an entitlement program, because if everyone gets it, then everyone's entitled to it. So they can't view it in that negative light. And that's why Social Security is so important and so popular. It's because it applies to everyone. So if we do the same thing, then we can make sure that public support for universal basic income remains strong for it. So look, I just view this as something that's great. It's universal basic income for a reason, although I completely can empathize with the argument of people who are saying we need to cut off the rich from it. But if you cut off the rich from it, then they're probably going to be against it, although it could be a way to fund it. So look, there's a lot of confusion about this topic and this issue, and we don't have all the details, but I think this experimentation is absolutely needed. So I'm excited to see how it turns out when it comes to Scandinavia and Canada, and from preliminary results, we already see that it's reducing stress with people who live in areas that offer universal basic income, and I think that alone is a great reason to support this. So look, we'll see, but this is a phenomenal step in the right direction. Kudos to Hawaii. You guys are electing people that actually give a damn about you. Congratulations.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.